Hi, my name is Krista, and I make these short little videos for you to help you manage your Meniere's disease so that you can start to get your life back. And today I want to talk about where we all go from a state of illness. We all have to go from a state of illness into a state of health, and there's a transition there. Um, in a state of illness, and I'll speak for myself. I was in a state of illness. I wasn't taking care of myself spiritually, mentally, physically, nutritionally, and I developed some symptoms. I went to the doctor. I got the diagnosis that we all get. And now I am officially in an illness state of mind. When I move through my day, I think of myself, and when I refer to myself, it is with an idea that Krista is not well. Krista is sick. And this is something that we don't really realize we're doing until, or unless you get those little windows of remembering when you did feel well, when you had more energy, when you had a lot less attacks, and what it feels like in terms of your self-identity. This is a video on identity. To get healthier, we've got to change our identity. And what does that look like? It starts with, we don't feel well physically. We consider ourselves as a sick person. That's our identity. And if you think about yourself and your identity as you know yourself as the well person, there's an identity to that too. I say, when I feel well, I am an artist. I make art in the studio. When I'm well, I have lots of time to work in the studio, and I have abundance of energy, and I never think about Meniere's. That's one aspect to my identity. Another aspect to my identity is I'm the kind of person who buys good food, who eats well, who eats almost all plant-based and enjoys that activity of the taste of it, the buying of it, the making of it. And that's who I am, is my identity. When I first started out, my identity was, I wake up in the morning and I have a bag of Cheetos and a big cup of coffee and a pack of cigarettes. That was my identity when I was sick, and it has changed greatly to getting well. And I'm saying this to you today because if you're in a place where you don't feel well, maybe you don't feel supported by people around you, or maybe you are like me, you lived alone, didn't have anybody to call, and you're sitting around spending time thinking about, how do I become the person that feels better? And it is related to this, how you view yourself as a person. There's going to be how you view yourself in the actions that you take, and there's going to be how you view yourself in the personality that you believe you are. It's kind of like when you're having a conversation with somebody, you have an identity or a description of yourself that you believe that's in that conversation with you. And that conversation has to change to a conversation of health. And so, by the way, before I forget, if you're in a place where you want to hop on the phone with me for an hour, talk about where you're at, where you want to be. That's what I mean when I say where you're at and where you want to be. You say, I'm dissatisfied with who I am, where I am, and I want to be somewhere else. And we talk about those things and the kinds of things that you can do to achieve that. If that's something you want, you're more than welcome to type in strategy call in the comments. Let me know. Send me a message. We'll get you on the schedule. But there are some practices that we do to keep our identity clean and healthy, just like our body. One of those is actions. It's the actions that you take. If you're the kind of person who enjoys eating well, then you're going to eat well, and your health is going to reflect that. If you're the kind of person that has strong opinions about keeping stress low, you're going to think twice before jumping into any kind of a stressful situation. There's that span of time between the invitation and the action where you decide whether or not you're going to partake in that, because you're the kind of person who believes that lowering stress helps you feel better. And so there's the actions that we take, and there's also little tricks that we can do. If you're saying, if I remember when I was first diagnosed, I had been living a lifestyle of bad nutrition for years and years. And I'd been extremely high stress, um, to where almost every thought in my head was negative. From the moment I woke up, sleep was my rescue, and so I would just hide in the bed, not get up, watch videos. I would nest. I would get all the food that I needed, and I would just put it around the bed, so I wouldn't even have to get up unless I had to use the restroom. It was that bad. And so the way you change these kinds of thoughts, the way you change these kinds of identities, is you start little, there, it's a little practices. And what I call is, I call it future self dreaming. It's dreaming in the future. It's imagining who you are. If you are having a lot of negative thoughts, that's not who you are. It feels like who you are. Maybe people around you are used to seeing that version of yourself and they treat you like that's who you are, but that's not really who you are. Who you are is connected, vibrant, as yourself, expressive, has interest, has ways to show who they are that aren't like other people. You're your own person. That's who you really are. And so these little sessions of dreaming about the future is getting connected to who you really are. Um, and it's a dreaming capacity. And so you pick a moment, say, mine is as I'm going to sleep at night. I like to dream about the future, but more than just getting what I want, right? I like to think about who I am in the future. Who am I when I am more patient? Who am I when I get more sleep? And what does that feel like? And how do I speak to people when I've received that? And what does my future self look like when I am less involved in what I want and I am able to focus on what the other person wants? What are my relationships like? If you are in a place where almost 24 hours of my day I'm thinking about hateful thoughts about myself and others, first of all, that's okay, because I know what that feels like. I've gone through that. What you do in these little dreaming moments, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they get to feel yummy. And so you like to do them. Maybe you're brushing your teeth in the morning and you're like, okay, while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to create this scenario that I am something simple. I am walking over to the neighbor's house as this new version of myself. And what does that look and feel like? Okay, so I open the door and I walk through it, but I'm this new version of myself. I like myself and I like people. And so what does that look like? Well, when I walk through the door, I'm not thinking the same thoughts that I am today. Maybe today, if I was to walk to the door, I might be thinking, what if I see neighbors? I don't want to run into anybody. What if I fall on the pavement, right? I don't know what your version of that is. That was my version. Instead of those thoughts, you walk to the door and you, for some reason, can't remember those thoughts, but instead you notice that that first little sprig of grass is coming through. You see a little piece of green in the brown. I know it's too soon for that, but I'm an optimist. You see a little sprig of grass there, and you notice that the weather's getting warmer, and you have those kinds of thoughts, and then those thoughts are going to trigger other thoughts that are in relation to who you believe that you are, who you express yourself for. And then when you get to your neighbor's house, you're having a two-way conversation where you're not self-conscious thinking about how awful you feel on the inside. And you start to get above this constant chatter of you're not good enough, you're never going to get better, you're an awful person. If you have those kinds of thoughts, um, that 15 minutes grows, because when you do that future self dreaming 10 minutes, 15 minutes, what you'll notice is that when you go throughout your day, the next day, if you do it at night, after the same day after you brush your teeth, you realize that your thoughts begin to shift. You start to shift into that new person because you have created the idea for it. You've sort of painted the picture. And the way the mind works is once we paint a picture, our mind begins to refer back to that picture. It happened when we started feeling badly about ourselves. We just can't remember that far back. But we created a picture, we started referring back to that picture, and it became real for us. And so in this transition between on your way from being ill physically, mentally, to being healthy physically and mentally, you're going to transition into that by the actions that you take and the way you think. Um, the way you think is easier than other people lead you to believe. I would suggest starting with this tiny little exercise, this little dreaming exercise of who you are in the future when all of this awfulness goes away. You know people who have gotten better with Meniere's. I know people who have gotten better with Meniere's. Neither one of us can see into the future. Neither one of us are doctors. But you got to admit, if you're eating right and you're thinking right, you're going to feel better. Um, if you're in a place where you're feeling so badly, I hope that this helps you. If you know somebody else that this would help, please feel free to share it. Get it out there. Let me know if you want that consultation. I'd love to know what you think about these things, how we use tiny techniques to improve our mental health and our physical health so that we can get our lives back. So I'm Krista. I'm going to sign out. I'll see you soon. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see you, and I will see you on the next run.